and welcome back to another review. Why is it that so many films were made, like so many amazing films were made in 1985? I mean, the list is absolutely endless. I mean, there must have been just something special about that year. There must have been just something in the air that was going round. I mean, if you looked at like what was made that year, you know, we had Back to the Future, we had Breakfast Club, we had Goonies, we had Police Story. And this film here, Return of the Living Dead, is no exception. This is absolutely just a great comedy, 80s punk horror that just everybody deserves to see. This is like the definitive what is like a cult classic. This is an amazing film, one of my all-time favourites, and I'll be getting into it today and why it is so amazing. It is beloved by so many people, and just what makes it so special, basically. Written and directed by Dan O'Bannon, the film is, like I say, a comedy punk horror done in spectacular 80s fashion. There is a reason why, as I say, this film is so popular, because the film is just so damn entertaining. You know, the film is just so undeniably entertaining from start to finish. You know, it never lets up off the gas. It just keeps going, everything about it, from that opening to the end, just works in such, you know, an amazing entertaining way. I'd say it's just so fun and everything you want and expect from a zombie movie. The film introduced so many concepts and mixed it up in regards to what you know, quote unquote, like a zombie formula type of movie is. For example, in this film, the zombies can run. They don't necessarily die from a gunshot wound to the head. The fact that the zombies eat brains, it really did sort of mix things up a bit in regards to the like zombie genre, and just like you know, because before that zombies were just very slow. Here they can run, they can move quick, and it put a different spin on sort of what was known, you know, what was regarded as sort of the stereotypical zombie movie traits that, you know, do happen. When John Russo parted ways with George A. Romero, who were both wrote on Night of the Living Dead, you know, as we both know, George A. Romero went on to do Dawn of the Dead. Russo retained the rights to use Of the Living Dead in a film that he saw fit, that he wanted to do, because they both wrote Night of the Living Dead. They both parted ways, and he got the rights to use Of the Living Dead in a film title. And I believe the film was originally going to be directed by Tobe Hooper of, you know, Texas Chainsaw Massacre fame, before being passed to O'Bannon. Of course, the movie has inspired so much and spawned countless sequels, but today we'll be looking at the original, and is easily one of my favourite movies. And like I say, this is what makes this is a cult film. You know, it's an amazing film. It's a brilliant film. But if you look up sort of what a cult film is, then Return of the Living Dead to me just sums up, you know, what makes a cult film. So a film opens with Frank, played by James Karen, showing new employee Freddy around like the You Need a Medical Supply warehouse where they work. I mean, the casting in this movie is absolutely perfect. The dynamic between Freddy and Frank at the beginning of the movie works so well between these two sort of like bumbling sort of assistants at this medical supply warehouse. Frank's sort of showing off, trying to show Freddy the ropes, and just showing him round the place. So I'd say sort of showing off. I love how at the start it says the movie is based on true events, and you know, and real people, giving you some idea of, you know, the kind of movie what is in store for you here. He's showing sort of Freddy how they pack their stuff, what, you know, how they do it, like a skeleton with perfect teeth, joking even that they have like a skeleton farm in India and things like that. Then we also have these groups of punks who are like cruising around and are friends of Freddy's and have nothing better to be doing. And I love how they fill all like the cliches of sort of like a punk sort of group. You've got each sort of characteristic is like ticked off by each member of this group. So Freddy asks Frank what's the weirdest thing he has ever seen come through the warehouse, and Frank asks him, did you know Night of the Living Dead was actually based on a true story? And he tells him about a trioxin, a chemical gas that was developed, and bodies sort of got exposed to it and was put in drums, and one of them was actually shipped to You Need a Medical Supply warehouse. So he's saying, like, you know, this thing topped it all, and he's like, do you want to see it? You know, he's like telling Freddy, he's like, no way. He goes, I don't believe, you know, you're winding me up, right? So he takes him down like to where the drum was, like drums stored in the factory, and he whacks it to prove how strong the drums is, like, because he says, well, you know, it's military engineering, nothing wrong with that. He whacks it, and of course the gas comes out. I love the opening credits as you see like the face of the body in the container sort of melting, and with that soundtrack as well. This film has like a really awesome soundtrack, really awesome music that sort of fits it absolutely perfectly, and it reanimates one of the bodies as well, one of the stiffs they got in the warehouse. So it's quite good. They have sort of in a way sort of a James Bond sort of pre-title scene, and then like I say the credits come up, and I just love that shot of the body in the drum with it all sort of melting around the face. I mean, it's just fantastic stuff. Really, really incredible stuff. Then we cut to this military colonel with one of my favourite pieces of dialogue in the whole movie. When his wife is all dressed up, she's all sort of prim and proper, and she's getting ready for dinner. She's like laying on a nice sort of banquet for her husband, and she's like, she goes, "How was your day, dear?" And he goes, "The usual crap," and it just really sort of sums up, because like they say, the dialogue in this film is quite hysterical at times. It's just the way he says, "The usual crap," it's just like the contradiction where she's trying to be this amazing sort of everything's perfect type of wife, and he's just drinking, like pulls himself a scotch. He's like, "Yeah, I've had, it's crap." And he checks into like his superior. So the punks go to mess around in the cemetery whilst they wait for Freddy. Him and Frank come to, and he says, "We best not tell Bert. He'll make us look like stupid or something." Which is, and they come out, and he's like, "Right, I better spray some deodorant around here." And he starts getting this canister, and he's just spraying this deodorant sort of cover up the fact they got, just leak this complete like chemical like trioxin around the factory. He's like, "Well, I'll just spray a few bit of deodorant, and that should sort of like solve the problem." Like that will actually make any difference. Then they spot one of these dogs that is sort of cut in half for medical purposes, like it's moving, which they beat with a crutch. Also, another one of my favourite lines is when he says to Freddy, they're sort of doing something, and he says, "Bearing in mind what's happened so far and the things that Freddy's been put through just within that 5-10 minutes, like on his first day." And he's like, he says something to Frank, and Frank says, "Watch your tongue, boy, if you like this job." And he's like this job? Like I'm actually going to stay here after all that's just happened. Like the job is probably not going to be for me with everything that's happened so far. It's just the way he says, "Like this job." Like, are you insane? Are you nuts? Like, this is absolute crazy. It's just the way he says, "Like this job." But I burst out laughing the first time I saw that. I love as well when Frank goes to call Bert, because he's like, we'll call the boss, and he tries to be all sort of calm and collected. He sorts his hair out, he has a mouthful of water, and he just rings up Bert, just trying to be so relaxed as possible. He's like, "Yeah, we got a bit of a problem, we got with this, you might want to come down here." So one of the punks starts stripping and taking her clothes off, and says basically the worst way for her to die is to be eaten alive by a group of old men. So at some point that's going to happen. That's going to happen to her later on in the movie. So Bert turns up to help Frank and Freddy to try and deal with the problem of the reanimated corpse. And I love how Bert at one point, he just gives Frank an axe, because Bert's like, "Right, we've got to sort this problem." He just gives Frank this axe, and he's like, "Right, when it comes out, you just whack it in the head." You hit it in the head when it comes out the door, and the whole time, like Freddie and Frank are so clueless and petrified, and he's like, "Oh Jesus, Bert, I don't think I can do this." And it's just the like I say, the dynamic between Bert, Frank, and Freddie is just it's incredible. I could watch it all day. The whole idea is them, like the film is just them three just trying their best to cover up the mess that's happened, just try and cover up this exposure that's happened. It's just hilarious stuff. So they open the door, and after all that prep, the zombie goes for Bert anyway. He proceeds to put an axe into the back of the corpse's head, and then he starts sawing it at the neck. I just love how it's so manic. It just is so absolutely manic. I mean, there must have been a lot of sort of improv in regards to the scenes. I must have had an idea of what happens, but when they're doing this bit in particular, it is so chaotic. It really is absolutely chaotic, and it's just it's Freddie and Frank's reaction to everything as well that just tickles me. So Bert comes up with the idea of using Ernie, who works in the mortuary across the road, so they can burn and get rid of the body. I love how Frank is like, "What are you going to tell him? I mean, can you trust that bastard? Where did that come from?" And he says, "How are we going to get it over there, Bert?" And he's like, "Right, get me the bone saw." right? So you know he's just going to saw the body up even more. So many memorable quotes from this film, so many memorable quotes, and I'm just sort of like just reciting them as they come to me off the top of my head. But yeah, so Get Me the Bonesaw, I think, is one of the top ones that does spring to mind. So they get it over to Ernie in pieces and tell him it's like rabid weasels, which is hilarious in itself. And I love the scene when Ernie says, well, that's, you know, what's in it for me? And Bert asks him, well, Ernie, what do you want? You know, what can we do for you? And there's this long pause where Ernie's just sitting there. He's just had like his trousers bitten away by this like corpse that's in pieces. And he just goes quiet. He just sits there and he just cuts around his trouser that's sort of uneven. He's doing that and he just goes quiet and he just says, right, let's take care of your problem. You know, it's just, I just think it's funny just the way he's like, you know, I didn't want this tonight. I really didn't want this. After, like I say, after his trousers got ripped, so they burn the pieces, and all of that goes into the air around the town. Then it starts to rain, meaning everyone will get infected. And again, the soundtrack here works so well with actually the visuals and what is happening on screen. Just that sort of continuous like soundtrack that happens, that music, when it really just does suit the atmosphere really well. It just like befits the film so much, with the visuals and the setting and everything. So Frank and Freddie start to turn after being exposed to the gas, and Girlfriend goes into the warehouse to find him and encounters the Tar Man, who has become like sort of a legend in himself, the Tar Man creature from this movie, who many sort of remember, even if nothing else. That's what a lot of people may sort of become legendary, the Tar Man. And he's basically the corpse from the barrel at the beginning of the movie. And I say, absolutely love this stuff. Works so well. I mean, this is when films were fun. And at one point, he just bites into the main punk's head. When he rips his curtain down, he just completely bites into the sort of the main dude's head from the group of punks. And what is great too is that the film has like two groups. You have like the punks, and then you have Bert, Frank, and Freddie and Ernie. Like, and it doesn't focus on like a whole city. It doesn't focus on sort of like what's happening to everybody else. It's just these two groups of people that do obviously come together about halfway through the movie. And I love how they like just link. You don't see anyone else. I love how it just focuses on these two. I love the skeleton coming up from the grave and that music that kicks in. You know, party time. Just works just to show the audience like just have fun. It's definitely not meant to be taken seriously. It's a comedy horror, and it's just like I say, it's just meant to be taken for fun. So the redhead punk gets her wish. I mean, if you look at the ambulance, like abandoned in the rain at one stage, it really did remind me of Resident Evil. Like when the paramedics arrive and they're going out and there's like this abandoned ambulance there, it really definitely gave off to me that sort of Resident Evil sort of 2, 3 kind of games. Like it just takes me back to sort of, you know, that abandoned ambulance in this sort of zombie filled city. You know, it really did give off them kind of vibes. So some of the punks run into Ernie's and some run into the medical warehouse. Games and movies owe so much to this film. The soundtrack, as I say, the soundtrack keeps the film light and fun despite what you are seeing on the screen, reminding you, as I mentioned, you know, to just enjoy it and have fun. Frank and Freddie are still turning. They get some paramedics, as I mentioned, to come out who say they are basically technically dead. They end up, paramedics getting up eaten. Then we have the infamous zombie getting onto the the communications of the ambulance to people back at the hospital and like send more paramedics. Again, another famous quote from this movie. Just too many to mention. Way too many quotes to mention from this movie. As I say, probably so many I'm forgetting, but I'll just as they come to me, as I'm sort of going through the film in my head, just reciting some of the classics from this film. So yeah, send more paramedics. So people Ernie's barricade themselves in using weapons like axe, pipes, hammers. They managed to get hold of the upper torso of one of the zombies. I love the design here, where they sort of lay it, the zombie top half on the bed, the torso, and like, you know, basically says they eat brains because it hurts to be dead and things like that. And I like the fact they're actually talking to one of the zombies as well. Again, no CGI, all props, all proper, you know, creature effects. Really well done, really great stuff. They eat brains, like I say, to help cause the pains of being dead. And Redhead The punk naked zombie appears. They put Frankie and Freddy in the chapel, as they are really turning big time at this point, all stiff and cold. And that's where even the eye detail, even like there's a lot of details in the film. It's awesome. If you look at the clock that is on the wall, there is actually the time actually does change too as the film goes on. Little things I've noticed where I've seen it so many times. If you notice like sort of the clock that is on the wall here throughout the film, not in it's in one of the rooms, but if you notice it, the clock is, it's not like they forgot to move the clock forward on certain scenes. Like Dan O'Bannon is actually paying attention to things like that, which does just little things that just make, you know, the film a little bit more, you know, they are paying attention. So also after eating cops, they get on the walkie-talkie again, and it's like send more cops. So it's just trying to keep, you know, that gag running, because the zombies just want more brains that they can eat. Loads of scenes from this movie that say like something like Shaun of the Dead owes so much to and paid homage to, like when they make a break for the cop car, and the way it is shot. I love the zombie cop flagging down other cops at, you know, at one point. Ernie and one of the punks hide in the attic, and the other two at the warehouse call the drum on the call the number on the drum on the canister, which goes to the colonel we saw at the start. And I love how calm he is when he answers the phone at the end of the movie. He's like, so what did you do then? So what happened next? I see. And what did they do? You know, it's just so calm, because you don't even know what is being said on the other end of the phone. You're just seeing that sort of that military guy's reaction. He's like sort of, right, yeah, okay. And, you know, I understand. So straight there, they'd like this contingency plan, which is to nuke the town, and even get this cartoony sound, as you would in, say, sort of maybe a Roadrunner cartoon, of that, the infamous like sound when a bomb's sort of landing or coming down from the sky. And the film ends with more zombies like coming up from the graveyard, implying like sort of the invasion is just at the beginning stages. But it's an absolute blast of a film. It really is one of these movies that I can always watch. I could watch it anytime. It just holds up in so many ways. And it's amazing actually watching it again recently, just how fresh it is, how fresh it still is, and how fresh it still seems, and how original it still seems in this world today of sort of remakes, rehashes, reboots, people doing just sequels to films that didn't even necessarily need a sequel. Return of the Living Dead is just, even after all these years, 37 odd years, it is still an amazing piece of work. It really is just 100% pure zombie comedy horror done at the best standards possible. It really does work in so many ways. And I'm sorry if there's so many bits I've missed from this from the movie and the review, because this, I say, to get through all of this film and really dissect it and get across to you just how much it means to me and what an amazing film it is. I mean, I could be here for hours, but just thought I'd give you a brief overall review today of Return of the Living Dead and why it's so awesome. And if you've never seen Return of the Living Dead, please go out and see it, especially if you, as I say, if you like your comedy, you like your zombies, you like your horror, and you just want, you know, probably one of the best horror comedies done in the 80s, then you look no further than Return of the Living Dead. There were sequels to this as well, which I will try and get to at some stage in later reviews, but for now, if you've never ever seen Return of the Living Dead, please go and check it out, because it is absolutely an amazing film. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.